and Saltzman in the spring of 1961 with a view to my playing James Bond in a motion picture. If I recall, there were a few other names connected to the job at the time. Cary Grant was interested, but too expensive. James Mason, some really quite big names. And then there were people from television, like Roger and myself. In fact, I believe Roger was asked but was unavailable as he was under contract to Lou Grade, playing Simon Templar in The Saint. Regardless, they had seen me in Danger Man, a series of half-hour TV shows which I had made for Lou Grade latterly, and deservedly so, Sir Lou Grade. I think the opening titles were far ahead of their time, actually. Going back to my initial discussions about the character, I had read, though not particularly enjoyed, a couple of the novels that Fleming wrote, Dr. No being one of them. I think what came across to me was that Bond was this blunt instrument of the state devoid of a suitable morality, and around the same time I had been approached to star in a Walt Disney project but had to turn it down. So I wanted to tone down some of Bond's, shall we say, more amoral, sadistic tendencies and make a series of adventure films for the whole family. This opening scene at the club, I seem to remember there was this ridiculous line where I have to say, my name is Bond, James Bond. I think we did a dozen takes before I was happy. Eventually I just said, I'm Jim Bond. I mean, who introduces themselves like that in real life? Ridiculous. I was playing opposite Eunice Gayson, a very charming and able actress whose character is after Jimmy Bond, and rather than open the door on loose behavior from the word go, I did argue, successfully, that their relationship would be best served as a purely platonic one, unrequited, if you like. So the line here about another time, another place, that was replaced by Bond suggesting that on his return from foreign parts, they might meet at a very nice Lion's tea house just off Piccadilly. Similarly, the original screenplay has an unrequited frisson between M's personal assistant, Miss Moneypenny, played. I, of course, found this quite against my better instincts, and here we see the scene I shot where it is revealed that she is in fact a cousin of Bond's, hence the familial affection only. I do remember working this scene with Bernard Lee was quite fraught, not because of dear Bernard, but again there were script problems. If I recall correctly, the script said something about Bond swapping the Beretta because it had jammed on him on his last mission. The Walther PPK is offered. But I thought it would be far more interesting if Bond, at this early point, swore off guns. And so in this scene with the quartermaster, I say, if it's all the same to you, sir, I'd rather not carry a gun. I feel I have the wits to think my way out of any situation you may assign to me. And thereafter, Bond does not carry a gun. As with any kind of screen narrative, we always film these arrival and departure scenes. They're not really of any great consequence and often end up on the cutting room floor. One point of particular interest in this one is the presence here as a background artiste, one Bettine LeBeau, a remarkable young woman who escaped the clutches of the Gestapo during the Second World War. I had previously worked with her on an episode of Danger Man. Now, one doesn't often talk at length with extras, but just a short conversation with her gave me the distinct impression that this lady had the life force in abundance. I think, again, in the original version of the screenplay, Bond was supposed to be killed by Dr. No's associates on his way up to see the treacherous Miss Taro, played by the fragrant Miss Zena Walker. There is a car chase, and the pursuing villains were supposed to all be killed in a fireball as their car accidentally crashes over the edge of a cliff top. Bond then proceeds to Miss Taro's house, seduces her before handing her over to the authorities. Thoroughly ungentlemanly behavior, and something I was not prepared to portray. In the end, we scripted a far more satisfactory scene where I, as Bond, guilt-ridden at the thought of having caused the deaths of Dr. No's henchmen, make it clear to Miss Taro the error of her ways. The subsequent arrival of Professor Dent and his cold-blooded murder of the pillow and bed linens is resolved similarly, much to my relief. So the end line was, that is a Smith & Wesson, Professor, and you've shot your six. So why don't we just put the kettle on, make a very nice cup of tea, and sort this whole thing out like gentlemen? Bond and his friend Quarrel track Dr. No's operations down to an island offshore from Jamaica, thanks to the information given freely by Miss Taro and Professor Dent. Here, Bond encounters Honey Rider. This particular scene caused some great disagreement between myself and our director, Terence Young, on a couple of counts. First, there was the sight of far too much flesh on show on the part of Miss Andress, or Miss Undress, as she became known. In the end version, I berate her for her lack of clothing and encourage her to put this towel around you, dear lady. You'll catch a nasty chill. That and the whole Peeping Tom aspect of this scene, as originally written, would never do, and subsequently led to my taking over the director's chair from Mr. Young for the duration of the film. And so Jimmy and his compatriots are captured and taken to the lair of the mysterious Dr. No, played in the film by Bert Kwok, with whom I had worked on various projects over the years. He was, at that time, the go-to Chinese actor, well, pretty much the only Chinese actor available. There was some talk of a Western actor playing the villain, complete with prosthetic eyelid makeup to make him look Oriental, but really that would have been racist. The film at this particular junction becomes self-explanatory, mainly visual, and so I should be very much obliged if I may have a very short tea break. In the film, Bond escapes and goes on to foil Dr. No's missile toppling scheme. And as is the norm for these sort of films, we blow up the evil mastermind's headquarters and watch from a safe distance, exchange a firm handshake, and make a promise to keep in touch. And so, Dr. No was released in November 1962 to lukewarm reviews and somewhat disappointing box office. A shame, as Messrs. Broccoli and Saltzman and I had plans for many further adventures. Indeed, we had discussions about these. The plan was to bring me aboard as an executive producer. The ones I remember discussing were From Russia with Like, Live and Let Live, and Goldfinger, where it was suggested that the wonderful Honor Blackman might be persuaded to play Kitty Galore. However, sadly, there wasn't much appetite for a family-friendly spy series, and the rest, as they say, is history.